affiliate.
Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strykers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strykers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60.
You know, that's some good tunes there, Philly. Welcome, everybody, to Soccer in 60. I'm your host, Tiki Tim Gorlatz. And it's going to be a fun one today. And with me today is my cohort, Philly Philemon. What's been going on over the last week, Philly?
It's been one of those busy weeks, Tim. Gotten back into the calling of college basketball over at UC Riverside, so the men and women kicked things off. Been podcasting like crazy. Luckily, we had the international break and nothing going on within MLS. I feel like MLS is over with the amount of time that we've had in between postseasons. But since we're at the end of the week, tomorrow's Friday, next week is Thanksgiving. The only thing I got to say to that is, cha-ching, correct. If you're watching, you know what I'm doing. If you're listening, I just cracked open a cold one. So cheers to everybody, and welcome to Soccer in 60.
Absolutely. It's not Frosty Friday. It is definitely Thirsty Thursday, though. You know, we got a hop-in show for you today. We've got the new head coach of the Empire Strikers coming on, sitting with us live here at the bottom of the hour. And we've got, Coach Obasi going to come in, hang out with us for a little bit. We've got all kinds of good stuff. I'm already missing Orange County Soccer Club, but we've got some news and notes about them. And we've got some fun stuff coming up this weekend. And like you mentioned, MLS soccer playoff action is back, baby. This time, there's no going home unless you lose. So you got to go home. You got to win or go home. Philly, let's get after it. Let's start off with LAFC and go a little back and forth with you, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it's been some time since we've had any kind of action in MLS, as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, international break. And LAFC sent several players to international break. You had Matty Bogusz representing Poland, Denny Bwanga representing Gabon, Kai Kamara getting the call-up with his stellar play for the Black and Gold, playing for Sierra Leone, Nathan Ordaz representing El Salvador. He got a lot of playing time. And let's not forget Kike Oliveira representing Uruguay. So a lot of LAFC players getting the opportunity to compete for their national team. But, I got to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on having this international break right here? It's the question, rest versus rust. Do you think this is something that benefits the players and the teams, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you the same thing a little later on, but let's get into it now. I think it's a disaster. I think the fact that you have in the middle of the playoffs, the freaking playoffs, we're talking about playoffs? Yes, we're talking about playoffs. And I think it's ridiculous. I think a 3-week break like the Galaxy are having between games is just atrocious. I don't like it. I think it's dumb. Is the solution to go to the scheduling that they have over in Europe? I think it has to be, because they don't have the international break where the playoffs would be in the early spring. And I think 3 weeks, I think it's going to be a little bit of a disaster.
I mean, keep in mind that they don't have playoffs really in Europe whatsoever. Yeah. You're right. It is an absolute disaster. You get the players that get to go out there and compete with their national team, which is awesome. You always want to have the opportunity to get the call up and represent your national team, but you run the risk of injury and things of that nature. So that's always a scary, scary proposition. Now, Denny Bwanga ended up scoring a goal with Gabon, so he was really successful. Kai Kamara got a lot of run. Matty Bogusz only played in one game. And let's see here. Who else? Kike Oliveira only competed with Uruguay in one of the games. He got 9 minutes in the game against Brazil, where it was a 1-1 draw. And thankfully, he got the opportunity to play, but didn't necessarily wear himself out. And that seemed to be a common thing for a lot of the players, where they would get the first game of the two in the international break and they would sit out the second. That wouldn't be the case, though, for Nathan Ordaz, as he would get the run for both games. But that's neither here nor there. International break is finally over, and the MLS Cup playoffs are here. And, Tim, it's funny. I mean, this time 2 years ago, playoffs were already done, and now we're just getting into the Western Conference semis. But Seattle's going to be a real tough team for LAFC to compete against.
Yeah, I'm looking at what they've done, playing against Seattle, but it is going to be Saturday night at BMO. So you've got with the, they're being the number one seed. If they make it past Seattle and they make it past the G's, guess where the MLS Cup's going to be at? It's going to be at home at BMO. But the LAFC has kicked Seattle's butt both in leagues and U.S. Cup this year, Philly, and 4-0 against Seattle this year, outscoring them 9-1. I mean, even with the few weeks off, I think LAFC has got Seattle's number.
I mean, you could argue that, sure. I mean, they're 8-0-2 in the last 10 games against the Sounders. In fact, the last time that LAFC lost against Seattle, May the 14th, 2021. Now, this is a rivalry that you could say goes back to the inception of LAFC's history. The very first game that LAFC had in their inaugural history was against the Sounders at then CenturyLink Stadium. Back then, we called it the Clink. Diego Rossi, 11th minute goal, propelled LAFC to their first ever win. And then the home opener at then Bank of California Stadium, also against the Sounders. That was a 1-0 win in extra time. Laurent Simon with an amazing free kick that got past Stephen Fry. And LAFC secured the very first win at home, very first opportunity. So in that time, obviously some back and forth. There was that 2019 playoff in which LAFC went up against the Seattle Sounders the round after they beat the Galaxy for the first time. And the Sounders silenced LAFC's run when they were the Supporter Shield champions and had one of the best records. But to your point, LAFC has had Seattle's number for quite some time now. But you could also argue the fact that maybe that's ripe for an upset as well, considering how badly LAFC played against Vancouver. And so we move into talking a little bit about again, that. So look, Seattle
international break, how much is this going to affect them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Look, Seattle also sent players to international break. You had four of them. You had Vargas, New, Hawkins, and Reed Baker Whiting that went and played internationally. So they got a couple of players that got some run too. And so as far as Seattle's concerned, let's talk about how they did over the course of the regular season. They finished fourth in the West with a 16-9-9 record. And a team that scored 51 goals for 35 goals against a plus 16 goal diff. So obviously they're very capable of scoring and very solid at playing defense. The interesting factor, though, for me is their record at home and away. It's almost identical in the sense that they both have had both home and away. The Sounders have won 8 times, but at home they were 8-2-7. Away they were 8-7-2. So it should be an interesting one. The way they got here, they beat Houston in the first round. Both games were won, but hard fought. There was no best of 3. It was all Seattle in that sense, but going into penalty kicks and winning that way, Seattle only scored 1 goal between the 2 games. So we can argue that they didn't exactly have the greatest performance within their first round either.
Yeah, and Seattle is on a 12-2 run right now, so they are on fire. They're the best in the second half of the MLS season. So coming in, fighting against LAFC, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a great matchup. You've both got some guys that have coming off of the international call-ups, and you've got them playing in BMO. I think LAFC is well positioned to take care of Seattle and make it 5-0 this season against them in all competitions.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going to have to contend with some stellar workhorses that the Sounders throw out there. You had Jordan Morris, who's leading the Sounders in goals with 13. Albert Rusnak, who came in a couple seasons ago from RSL, is also having one of his best seasons in Major League Soccer. Second leading scorer. He's got himself 10 goals on the season, but a whopping 16 assists. So he is very much a part of the attack for the Sounders. Can't look past the Peruvian pistolier himself, Raul Ruidiaz, 8 goals himself. Paul Rothrock with 5, Jackson Reagan, another 3, Christian Roldan. Christian Roldan still there taking care of business. So they've got a lot of stellar tools in Brian Schmetzer's little toolkit thing there. I mean, they're a dangerous team, very well coached. And, of course, there's that chip on the shoulder. Same that Vanni Sartini and the Vancouver Whitecaps had. It's like, how much more can we handle this losing to LAFC. They're going to come in on fire, hungry, and they know they've upset LAFC in the playoffs in the past. And a lot of these players that I mentioned, Jordan Morris, Raul Ruidiaz, the keeper, Stephen Fry, they've played against LAFC. They've beaten LAFC at BMO Stadium. So they're going to come out real aggressive. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah, and I don't expect this to be a 1-0 game, 2-1 game. I'm looking for 3-4 goals at least in this game. The Hugo Lloris and the back line of LAFC is going to really have to batten down the hatches the first 10, 15 minutes of this game, because Jordan Morris is going to be on fire, like you said. You've got 4 other guys with 6+ goals. I expect there to be a goal either way that is going to happen within the first 8-10 minutes, if not sooner than that. I think that both of the teams are going to come out wanting, the LAFC is going to want to just make Seattle bow down to them again. And Seattle is going to not want to be the little brother anymore. You know, they were Michigan State colors, but they're going up against them. They don't want to be the little brother to LAFC anymore.
I mean, we can't exactly say the Sounders are the little brother. I mean, they've had a stellar tenure within Major League Soccer as well. When this MLS 2.0 came out, Sounders were one of the top teams. But if you go into what LAFC has done since coming into the league, it's just been incredible. They could potentially be just the 3rd team in MLS to reach 3 straight MLS Cup finals. We haven't seen this since New England back in 2007. And I mean, and how they've done, even starting that 2022 season, they've gone what? They played 142 games. They've gone 79, 36, and 27. Without a doubt, one of the most dominant teams in 2018. So, all right, maybe there is a little big brother component there. If you factor 2018, you got the 2024 U.S. Open Cup, 2022 MLS Cup, 2022 Supporters Shield, 2019 Supporters Shield, and they've been in 9 finals. Since 2018, Tim, LAFC has registered the most regular season wins at 113, the most points at 389, and goals scored at 440. So, all right, maybe I will acknowledge your big brother comment there.
Just a little bit. I don't want to totally squash him like a bug, but just un poco. I crush you like bug. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting matchup. I think the front line of Matty Bogusz and the rest of his boys up front are really going to make it a challenge. But again, I worry about that first 10, 15 minutes for either team, because I could easily see either team being down a couple of goals within the first quarter of an hour.
I mean, that's a strong possibility. You willing to put your money where your mouth is? You think there's going to be a goal scored in the first 10? Lay it out on the line, man. How much you willing to put up on that bet?
Absolutely. As my great Aunt Kathleen would say, I'll bet you a nickel.
I mean, we're in inflationary environments, Tim. You could at least go a quarter, possibly even $1.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, I'll go $1. I'll bet you $1, Philly, and a green bearded next week that there's a goal within the first 10 minutes of this game.
All right, you heard it right here. Let's see if he makes good on his bet. I know the car you drive. I know you could do more than $1, but I'll leave you to that, George Washington. That's fine. No Benjamin Franklin's just yet.
Exactly. No bennies. We'll get to that next time when it's Galaxy and LAFC in the Western Conference Finals. So, and with that, let's boogie over to the Galaxy. We had talked several times about how LA Galaxy has just destroyed everybody at Dignity Health Sports Park this year. The only home loss was to the LAFC, but that was at the Rose Bowl. Other than that, they are unbeaten at their home digs. And I don't see that changing at all. I know there will be some rust, but let's talk a little bit about the international component to this. The Galaxy only had 2 players get called up to international duty, and both of them were on the under 20, and one was on the under 20, and one was the other 19. So on the under 20 team, they had Ruben Ramos Jr. get pulled up, and Harbor Miller got pulled into the under 19. Nobody else from the Galaxy got pulled up, but 9 guys from Minnesota got pulled up into international duty. And while you had talked, Philly, about the number, or 7 guys, I'm sorry, got pulled into international duty. Well, you pulled the stat about not everybody getting a whole lot of run. Only one of the players that got called up for Minnesota only played one game. The other 6 guys played both games in this international window. And I'm just wondering how that effect is going to be on them, Philly.
I mean, I think when you're coming off of international duty, in particular, if you got some playing time, regardless, you'd gotten to compete with some of the top talent, clearly the top talent in the countries that they're from. And the players that Minnesota United brought that went to international duty, these are some of their biggest players. Michael Boxall, for example, Robin Lod, who is one of their talismans, Timu Pukki, the all-time leading scorer in Finnish national history. And of course, Dane St. Clair, the keeper, got his run with Team Canada, and several other players. But these are 4 of the top players that Minnesota United have. So I think in this set of circumstances, they're going to come back motivated and rejuvenated. And this Minnesota United team, this isn't a team to sleep on. Yeah, fine. They finished 6th in the West, 15 wins, 7 draws, 12 losses, but they're better on the road than they are at home. 8-6-3 versus 7-6-4. And if you look at their form since August the 24th, that was the last time they had a loss, and that was 3-2 against Seattle. But since then, just once in 10, they just lost once in 10 games, and that's across regular season and playoffs. And the interesting thing, Tim, and this is going to be a interesting battle of the clipboard, across the course of those 10 games, they haven't had 50% possession or more in any one of them. So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I find that fascinating too, because what it means is that if you don't have the ball very much, when you do have it, you're making the most of it. And so say even if you're at a 40% possession rate, or something like that, the fact that when you do have the ball, you're attacking and you're putting balls on frame and you're putting balls on net, really, that's going to be very interesting to me too, as to what the back line of the Galaxy can do to help slow that down. And I like your comment about them coming back motivated. When you've got 7 guys coming back from international duty and they're playing they're playing for the flag. And then they're going out and playing against a very high level of competition in the UEFA Nations League, things like that, and the CONCACAF Nation League, and a couple of World Cup qualifiers. The intensity is pretty high. So I'm just wondering if, with nobody being called up for the Galaxy, if they're going to be able to match some of that intensity that you mentioned.
I mean, that's the classic rust versus rest comment, but the players that are really effective for the Galaxy, they're not relying on older legged DP players. The $20 million that they shelled out for designated players falls in the line of Ricky Puig, Gabriel Peck, who was the MLS newcomer of the year, and Joseph Paintsil. And if you look at their statistics, they're jaw-dropping. All have scored at least 10 goals and 10 assists this season. And that's a historical record, because, that you have to go back to the 1998 Galaxy trio of Kobe Jones, Mauricio Cienfuegos, and Welton. That was the last time you had 3 teammates on this team hit that double-double. And no, we ain't talking about In-N-Out Burger. And based on that statement, you can tell where my mind is heading. I'm freaking hungry. But this is a team that's got a lot of young talent. So there's no reason why they should be coming into this game rusty. They should be coming in well-rested. But Minnesota United have played them well, Tim. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the results. It was a last-minute goal at Dignity Health Sports Park that helped propel them up 2-1. And then they drew earlier in the season. So Minnesota knows a little something about how to play against the Galaxy. Again, they barely escaped with a win at Dignity Health Sports Park. Barely.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, coming in, getting him late. The notes that I have were talking about, Minnesota better be up a couple of goals at halftime, because the Galaxy absolutely crushed teams in the second half. They have 31 second half goals just at home. And so while you mentioned that the Minnesota United are, got 8 wins against 6 losses on the road and a couple of draws, I think that the Galaxy are going to come into this, and I think they are going to be motivated. I think while it was probably the best thing that could have happened that they ended up in second place in the West going into the playoffs, I think they're going to be motivated a little bit more to put the wood to Minnesota United. And again, I think this is going to be another game where it'll be, maybe 1 or 2 goals in the first half. It'll be tight. Everybody will be playing pretty hard. And then I think the Galaxy pull away in the second half and get a couple in the back of the net and put this game away 3-1 by the end of the night.
I mean, it's not rocket science. You know they're going to come motivated. You don't have to believe or expect them to come motivated. This is the playoffs, for Christ's sake. Do or die. It's now or never. And this is a Galaxy team that's hungry for postseason success, especially with the team 13 miles up the 110, having been a lot more successful since 2018. So motivation is clearly not going to be a factor. But as far as the way the game goes, with Minnesota United not maintaining more than 50% possession, the Galaxies are going to have to be careful to not create too many mistakes within that midfield area because they don't want to be beat on the counter. So we mentioned Robin Lod, a fantastic scorer, but Bankole Holongwane, also another a great scorer, 11 goals over the course of 34 games. And Teemu Pukki, while he might not be lighting it up this season as much as he has during his time at Norwich City, this guy can score. I mean, he's got so many goals to his credit playing in England, playing for the Finnish national team. So they're going to come out there with an interesting scenario. But the Galaxy, to your point, are very much a second half team. So that's where they're going to go out there and be aggressive. Minnesota United, not even 3 goals, which I doubt they're going to score, FYI. Not even 3 goals is going to be enough to silence the Galaxy. I think this is going to be a tight one, though, for sure.
Yeah, again, I think it'll be tight in that first half. It'll be really a rough and tough battle, and I think the Galaxy really have to bring in their physicality this coming game against Minnesota United. Guys like Gabriel Pack, he's only 5'9", but hopefully he can just run past everybody like he has done everybody else this entire season to get 10+ goals, take care of business, and they put them away in the second half.
I mean, let's not forget. So we mentioned the killer peas. Everybody and their mother are talking about the killer peas. But let's not forget Dejan Joveljic. I mean, 17 goals to his own credit. So that's another player to keep an eye on. And so many scoring options for Greg Vanney's team.
Yeah, and, we have talked a lot about Peck and Paintsill. But again, Dejan Joveljic, like you mentioned, he at 17 markers. You've got so much firepower on the Galaxy. Where do you start to defend? Who do you double team? Who do you look after, and who do you foul harder? Because if you do that, Puig or Pooch, I'm thinking Yasiel Puig again from a couple of weeks ago. You and the Dodgers are killing me here. You got Pooch and Paintsill and Peck, and right there in the middle is Joveljic, and I think that Joveljic is going to have a great game this time out too. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun on Sunday night. Check them out on Apple TV and on the Tube, 7:30 Sunday night local time here in LA. Check them out. Scream and yell. Let's go Galaxy.
Tim, do you have anything to drink, by the way? Because let's play a little game. Every time you say, you're taking a shot, that's the game that we're playing for the rest of the day. And I'm going to call you out on that every single time. Now, we're going to move on to the Empire Strykers. We've already talked to MLS. Let's talk about indoor soccer. And with that being the case, we have a guest on our show today. Our guest is one of the most exciting young indoor coaches in the country and the new head coach of the Empire Strykers. An Englishman, that's 2 weeks in a row. He first came to the U.S. to play college soccer and went on to enjoy a stellar pro career in both 11v11 and 6v6. On grass, he won a USL title with the Rochester Rhinos and appeared nearly 100 times for the Ottawa Fury, not to be confused with the Ontario Fury. On turf, he helped the mighty Baltimore Blast to an MASL trophy in one of his 3 seasons in Maryland. He also laced up for Utica City, the Ontario Fury, now the Empire Strykers, and the Harrisburg Heat. The list goes on. 2023, he coached Newtown Pride to the $1 million prize of the prestigious small-sided competition known as the TST. The side came close to repeating this feat this year. Let's all give a warm welcome to Strykers head coach Onua Obasi. Coach Obasi, how you doing?
I'm good, Billy. Nice to be here with you guys.
Nice to have you on. It's so cool that you're a head coach, and we got to know each other during your playing days. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's get into things, Coach Obasi. I'm sure you like the sound of that. Now, last season, you were still playing in the MASL with the Harrisburg Heat. Then, a couple of weeks ago, you're suddenly announced as the new man in charge of the Strykers, having most prominently coached Newtown Pride of TST, and at the time, being set to take the lead on an MASL2 team in Danbury, Connecticut. Now, I'm sure the news out of Empire caught a lot of people by surprise, but Coach Obasi, talk me through how you were first approached and how this process unfolded from there.
Yeah, so I had a very fortunate experience with the TST tournament, winning the $1 million, and then the second year having, being the runners, semi-finalists. And, I think I'm assuming, I haven't actually spoke to Jimmy Norberg, who is the GM here, about this specifically, but I know he was at that tournament, and my team was, I think I can safely say probably the most structured team, the most organized team at the tournament in the way we played. It doesn't always mean you're going to win, every game or win the whole tournament, but I think maybe he saw that, and that stood me in good stead. Obviously, I had a relationship with him and Jeff when I played here, and yourself. So the doc, of course, and so I think obviously we had a good personal relationship where we got on, and it was good respect, and just a good working relationship when I was here, even though my time here wasn't the most successful for the club, even for myself with injuries and stuff like this. But yeah, I got a call out the blue, and me and Jimmy were just chatting away, talking about coaching and youth coaching, which I do a lot of, and so does he. And and he was like, "Listen, there's opportunities opened up here. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Wait, head coach or assistant coach?" And he was like, "No, head coach." And I was like, now we're talking about something I would, change my life and because I had stuff in the pipeline, and obviously my family's on the East Coast as well. So yeah, we talked a little bit more, and I obviously broke the news to a very close friend of mine who owns the MASL2 team, him and his wife, and I'm really, really close with them. So that was a really hard conversation that I was basically saying to Jimmy. I was saying, listen, I'm not sure I can do it because I have a huge obligation with someone who's like family to me. So let me clear that up first. And my friend, like any true best friend would be, was very supportive, and he was like, yeah, we're gonna miss you, but huge opportunity. And my wife was the same. Had to get the green light from her as well. And yeah, so the most important people gave me their blessing, and I was able to say yes to Jimmy, and flew out maybe 3-4 days later, like very quick turnaround. And yeah, we're living out of a suitcase until my car gets here with all the rest of my gear, and nothing to shave my face. If you can see this beard, getting scruffy.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the beard there, Coach Obasi.
Yeah, your beard, mine is terrible.
You mentioned it real quick, and obviously I want to harp on that a little bit. For those who don't know, it's not exactly like you were hanging out, just not doing anything. You were supposed to coach MASL2 side Spice City FC in Danbury, Connecticut. Now, I think everybody can understand that when the top tier organization comes calling, it's difficult to pass up. But what was it specifically about the Strykers that made you want to take on this challenge rather than sticking to Danbury, Connecticut?
It's a good question, mate. I think with Danbury, Connecticut, obviously it's MASL2, so it's not the highest level of the sport. It was going to give me a great opportunity to coach multiple times a week, high level players, but the thought of coaching every day of the week with professional players is just a different proposition. And with TST, I got to work with basically the best talents in the MASL, and I got to see, how much fun it is, and how rewarding it is, and how much you can structure things, and you can implement your ideas when you have such high level players who are present every day of the week. It's their job, it's their full-time job. So that really struck me as a huge opportunity. I have a lot of ideas about indoor, a lot of, I've played for some great coaches and took bits and pieces, and I've been cutting video of games and teams for years before I even had really any interest in coaching. I just naturally enjoyed doing that. So I had a lot of ideas, and I know with Spice City, it would have been harder for me to implement those ideas. Whereas I really had an ability to do that if I'm training every single day. And then if you mix in the fact that Jeff Borum, he's the owner of the Strykers, he's someone who's very invested, which Philly, obviously firsthand, he's so invested in growing the sport that if you're part of his team, you're in a position where you're probably going to get the resources and the support you need to be successful. So, that was the two main draws there. yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I'm fortunate enough I was able to take it.
Yeah. So, Coach Obasi, you've mentioned it twice now in talking about the structure and cutting film and things like that. We've heard a lot about you being very organized and detailed oriented. If you don't mind, go a little bit more in depth on that, and also share with the Striker fans out here what they can expect in terms of how you interact with the players. Are you intense and demanding? Are you empathetic, understanding? Are you getting loud? Are you calm, cool, collected, analytical all the time? Paint a picture for us, Coach.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, to be fair. Yeah, I think when it comes to attention to detail, I've played for some great coaches. I played for Danny Kelly in Baltimore. We won the finalist, and then we won it the following year, 2016. Played for Bob Lilly, who was a USL Hall of Famer in the outdoor game. We won the USL Championship, in 2015. So I've had David Bascom, Pat Healy, who was a fantastic teammate, one of the best defenders I've ever seen. Someone who I didn't think he trained very well in the week, and then on the weekend he was the best player. He's slim. He's not a huge athlete, but oh my goodness, watching him play. And then I got to work with him as a coach, so I got to see that side of him. And just different teams I was on. I had coaches in Ottawa Fury who, for good or for bad, taught me a lot of different lessons. So I think one of the themes of the best coaches I had was they didn't overlook the small details. Like, you can have a plan, a game model, how you want your team to play, but if you let things slide in training and then you want to then criticize the players or be angry at the players during the game at the weekend, for me, it never made sense. I always felt it was a little bit, I wouldn't say dishonest, but just a bit, I don't know, it never sat well with me that the same players doing the same thing on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then when they do it on a Saturday and it causes an issue, all of a sudden it becomes the reason we lost. Or so basically that kind of informs how I, really be clear with the responsibilities and roles of each player in each moment of the game. So when we have a moment in the game, we can all refer back to something that we have reference to, and that it's common for us. And I love to be at the point today, and even in training today, I see it. Players are coaching the other players because they know what they should be doing in those moments, which for me is a good sign of the progress we're on. But yeah, it's more about making sure it's very clear in this moment. 99% of the squad is looking at that same picture, and it's predictable what should happen. So then the next player can react off that, and the next player can react off that. And I just think it's the way the top teams play, in 11-a-side and indoor, of course. And just obviously the challenge of the coach is to be so consistent with that message. And, you use the video and you stop training at certain moments and you speak to players individually. And there's a ton of different ways to kind of create that. But that's what I'm trying to do. And hopefully the proof will be in the performances and stuff like this. But yeah, to your question, to the second part of your question, Tim, is that I think as a coach, obviously I've worked with professionals before in a high intensity environment, basically win or go home type environment. And I just think, one, being transparent, being very honest, as a player, my final season at outdoor 11-a-side in the USL, I didn't play every moment, but the coach, he was actually, I guess, brutally honest at one point and then didn't talk about it for the rest of the season. And I just feel as though being honest is very powerful. You tell players, this is where you stand. This is the role I see for you. And if they don't like that role, or then at least you can have it out front. You can say, all right, well, that doesn't suit me. And then you can go from there. But I think when coaches try and, beat around the bush or not give clear answers or not give a clear reason, what do you want from your targets? If you do X, Y, and Z, you're pushing for a start. If you're not doing X, Y, and Z, then you should know that you're probably not pushing for a start. So just being really clear, I think, and honest and transparent with the players and what your expectations are for them, I think is a good place. Understanding that they have lives, they have families, they have, things that interfere with just purely football, and being patient with that and understanding of that. I always really appreciate that. It's one of the things Pat Healy was really good at. That basically he didn't stress the players about things that were just arbitrary almost. He just was like, listen, we're all humans, just roll with it and let's build a good relationship. And those sorts of things I saw from him firsthand last season, which was great. And yeah, I'm not really the type who's screaming and shouting. I'll be honest, it's not really my personality. I've worked with a lot of kids, and I tell the parents, I'm like, listen, you guys scream and shout enough for me. Like, I don't have to do it. But I
You're
think
probably screaming and yelling more at the parents at that point, right?
I know. It's a battle. It's a battle I fight when I coach young kids, because for the same reason, professionals to a degree, is that if you're shouting at someone to do something and they have no reference for what you're telling them to do, it's a waste of time. It's distracting. It's so my job, I look at my job of giving the players a really strong reference and a really strong understanding of what I want to see them do. So if they don't do it, I don't take it personally. It's just a moment to correct them, or I can refer to something that they will understand. It's like, it won't be a surprise.
Teaching moments, right?
Yeah, a teaching moment, because at the end of the day, the season is long, and a game is going to be made up of all these moments, and players are trying their best. They're trying their very best to do what you want. You should see that every day in training. So you're the one picking them to play in the game and represent your ideas and your community and your team. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm optimistic about the squad. I think our squad's improved a lot, so I think I can demand more of this group than maybe last season, perhaps with the way the squad was.
I mean, speaking of players, the Strykers made it a point this offseason to reacquire some of their most impactful players from past campaigns. This week alone, the club has announced the return of fan favorites Emmanuel Aguirre, George De Leon, Andy Reyes. Like, you've already had all three in camp for a short while. What do they add to the team, especially given that all three players had played together at Texas last season and don't really need to build chemistry from scratch?
Yeah, mate. It was when I heard those names, they weren't finalized when I signed. So obviously, I was looking at the roster as soon as I had the conversation with Jimmy. I was looking at the roster, being like, okay, what can we do here? Like, what even before I'd signed the piece of paper, I was like, all right, what are our potential here? And then when I heard that we were getting those three players, Texas had some serious players on that team. You got Morales, Sebas, Mendez, and you had Ortiz as well. So they had a really good core, and they pushed San Diego in that series. They give teams really good games. And obviously Tattoo and Segu as the coaches, they did some really good stuff that I looked at and said, oh, that's a nice idea. I'm going to try and steal that one, So when I was watching those players play last season, I was very impressed. I'd played with George and Aguirre before. I played one tournament with Andy, so I knew that they were good professionals, good personalities, which I think is massive. If you're trying to build any success, you can't sacrifice that character aspect and the professionalism aspect. So I already knew that they were going to be very open and very coachable and very much want to do what you're going to ask them to do. And then add on top of the quality, George De Leon is one of the best shooters of the ball I've seen in my career. He's such a good shooter of the ball. Aguirre he's a very strong defender. He's come on really, really well the last few years. I played with him at Ontario. He's just got better every year. And Andy's a player who buzzes around, and I was watching him and I was like, who's that number 14 a couple of years ago? And it was Andy Reyes. So he was someone I was a fan of. And then when I heard we might get him, I was like, do everything you can to get that guy, because he can, he's in that mold of, Charlie Gonzalez, Gabriel Costa. He's in that mold of players who can lead you with their ability to stay on the ball and stay calm and just make the right plays and be in the right spots. So yeah, we were very fortunate to have those guys come back. And obviously Robert Palmer is another one who was previously here, best defender in the league, for, I'd say many of the years, but he's won defender of the years for a couple of them. So, he was a huge piece as well, So yeah, it's very, very exciting, the players we have in, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coach, just one final question before we let you go. Again, the Strykers have re-signed a slew of previous standouts with the Ontario Fury, as the club was once called in 2022. But you yourself enjoyed a brief stint with Ontario. Now, although you didn't really get to enjoy it due to some nagging injury issues that you alluded to, nonetheless, you were still teammates with current Strykers, Clayson DeLiba, Roberto Palmer, Aguirre, Stinson, Gonzalez, De Leon, Cisse, Mansoret, Perez, and several others, of course. What's it like all of a sudden getting to tell these guys what to do? And do you ever catch yourself wishing you could just jump into the arena with them once the season kicks off?
Yeah, you know what? I must admit, I've almost had the opposite thought in terms of, because when you're a coach, or it's just any job that you're super into, you're up late doing the work, you're up late doing the video, you're up late thinking about things, and you're up early then presenting the video and making sure it's edited right. So I remember my sleep has been not great. I'm normally really someone who likes to sleep, enjoy their sleep. So I was thinking to myself, if I was preparing to play, I'd be stressed out, like with the lack of sleep and the just not living right. Eating, I eat more freely. I'm eating Mexican food every day, and what I mean. So it's like, if anything, I'm like, I look at these guys and what they have to do to prepare to play with the intensity they do, and I'm just like, I don't envy them, even though I would love to, of course, be in training. And I'm still, I was playing last season. I'm still playing tournaments. I still have ability to play, but it's not something that I have the same, drive towards. I'm much more interested in making the team play right or making the structure right. But to your point about all the previous players, I think I was fortunate enough that, I was on really good terms with all of them. I didn't fall out with any of them. It was just really good teammate, a nice vibe. And I think by having that, it meant when I came in, and I must admit, being here, I was injured a lot. So I'd watch a lot of training, and I saw how good, like an Abdul Mansoureh is someone who, the league, he's not a huge name in the league, but I always would watch him in training and be like, this guy's really good. Like he can do more. Alan, someone who was very new when I got here, he's turned into a really, really good two-way player. So it's like, I looked at these players back then and was always thinking, they can do more. They have a higher ceiling than they're able to show, and just, where they're at in current circumstances and team dynamics and stuff. So now I get a chance to really make it true, make that potential come true that I saw.
All those guys,
how I would use them. So yeah, it's really cool, getting to work with them and putting them in these good spots and saying, hey, you can be fantastic in this league. You can be one of the best players in the league if you can execute this and that. So yeah, mate, it's been really cool. Yeah, it's been really cool.
That's awesome. Well, Coach, you don't have to keep the playing weight, so knock out some carnitas tacos and a couple of quesadillas, Hey, Coach Obasi, we appreciate it here at Soccer in 60. Thanks so much for hanging out with you, and we look forward to the home opener here coming up on December 13th here at Toyota Arena.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Coach.
Cheerio.
Pleasure. Man, what a fun guy. I mean, he has got some great energy. He's going to get after it, and the Empire Strikers are going to be really, really nicely well coached this year, and it looks good. It looks good with all the signings, and I'm glad that you hopped in there and he hopped in there with a couple of the names, because I did not realize that it was a Gary. I thought it was a Guire. So
no,
nice
that's
job,
because
Billy.
you're from. I'll forgive you for that one, mainly because you're from Michigan and you had an Aguirre that played on the Bad Boys Pistons team, so I know why that mistake would have come to fruition. But anyway, we need to move on, Tim.
Let's move on. Let's talk a little Angel City and about what's going on with them. They do have several call-ups. Take us through some of the call-ups. I know that Megan Reed got called up for Canada. We got Claire Emsley. What else is going on with Angel City, Philly?
Yeah, Claire Emsley had a fantastic season for Angel City FC. She gets the call-up for Scotland. Alyssa Thompson is going to have an opportunity to go into the final camp of the year in 2024, and so well-deserved. For those that don't follow the NWSL or the women's game, remember that name. Alyssa Thompson plays for Angel City. She's not even old enough to have a drink at the bar. She came into the professional rankings barely even having gone to prom. So a player to keep an eye out on. And of course, her sister Giselle. And I've heard that there's another Thompson that's just as fantastic. So those three players have gotten call-ups, very well represented for Angel City FC. And that's not the only bit of news. Obviously, with the season being over, the NWSL playoffs still kicking things in. The final will be in Kansas City. You got Sarah Gordon, who's going to get an opportunity to compete in the skills competition. So there will be some Angel City FC representation there. But the coolest bit of news that I came across recently through them, they've got the largest dedicated training center in the NWSL. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this one is amazing to think about this. They've trained at Cal Lutheran up in Ventura County since their inception. The LA Rams have moved out of it and moved into a new facility, and there is now a 9-acre facility that the Angel City Football Club is taking over. they're doing a multi-million dollar renovation project. They are going to have a 50,000 square foot indoor facility dedicated solely to
How
the
much, Tim?
NWSLT, multi-million. And
No,
it's
no, no, the square footage.
50,000 square foot indoor facility that's going to have a gym and all kinds of training facilities right there on the campus of Cal Lu.
Not 5,400?
Well, the gym alone is 5,400.
Okay, I just that's pretty big size.
Yeah, it's huge. And so it's going to be completed. This is the best part, that they've taken this thing over and they're going to have it completed before the start of the 2025 season. So they're going to be able to run out of this facility for decades, out of this brand new facility that they're renovating. It's going to be beautiful for the Angel City Club and NWSL as a whole, because it will up what the rest of the clubs have to do to keep pace with Angel City.
Yeah, of course. I mean, with Kansas City being the first to get their own dedicated soccer-specific stadium for women, that's a big threshold to come through. But with LA, Jesus, I need to get that out of my head. Angel City FC coming out with their practice facility. I mean, there's just so many appealing aspects that ACFC is bringing to the table. You said a 5,400 square foot gym, all the state-of-the-art technology, sports science stuff that you need, a hydrotherapy area, 3,400 square foot medical treatment and rehab area, a nutrition area, a children's playroom, 930 square foot team meeting and film room. I mean, so many things going on. It's not what the professional leagues for the women had been in the past. Continuing to up the level and getting more eyes. In fact, NWSL broke a record for the most amount of attendance and eyes on the league. So they just continue to get bigger and better. And that's just an awesome thing. Love seeing the women's game grow.
It's fantastic to see it grow like this. And when you get ownership, that with the new ownership that Angel City has, obviously they saw something in Angel City that a lot of other teams did too, obviously, with the influx of sponsors this year, with the new sleeve sponsor, with several new sponsors for the front of the jersey on their training kits. The level of sophistication that the NWSL now has and is going to continue to do for the next several years, it's encouraging to the women's game. And it's fantastic because now you have a lot more, like you said, eyes, the biggest attendance since the inception of the league. Now everybody is. This is truly now global, because you just look at it. Angel City has got 3 call-ups to multiple different teams in just this in the late international window coming through in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, of course. It's very exciting stuff. And yeah, attracting the best players is what Angel City needs. They're so winning in terms of off the field. It's just a matter of it translating to success on the pitch. But with all the resources that they're putting in, and obviously all the eyes, ears, attention, sponsorship money that's coming in, the best players will undoubtedly find their way in to Los Angeles and will be playing at BMO Stadium. So that's going to be fun. Sadly, we don't get to see them in this postseason because the season ended the way it did, but the future was very promising for Angel City. That goes without question.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to be very, very dialed in for the season opener come spring. Look out for Angel City. I don't believe that they're going to be on the outside looking in next year. I believe that they're going to be in the thick of it, in the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the whole league. And so I expect great things out of them coming forward.
Yeah, of course. They'll have a healthy June Endo, so that's another thing to look forward to.
Could you imagine with some of the stars that they're going to bring in, and then a healthy June Endo coming in? I mean, June Endo was keyed in for a breakout. I mean, she had already been a star, but just incredible coming in, and unfortunately he's having to sit out the entire season with that injury. A healthy June Endo is going to do wonders for that team. They're going to be standing room only at BMO. So with that, hey, let's hop over to Orange County. Orange County, it's the off season for them after the County boys, finished up their playoff run. They had a great end of the season. And while it's the off season, they're getting things dialed in quickly. They've got a few very key things that they need to address here in this off season. I spoke with the team just yesterday, and great news on the front in the midfield is Brian Olowski, who had that devastating injury early part of the season. He's taken on rehab of his knee with full confidence and great spirits. He's got a big smile on his face. I know that it's going to be a hard road to hoe, Brian, but get after it, play, get strong, get back, and we look forward to seeing you on the pitch early in the season next year. I don't know if you'll be ready to come back right away, but the midfield is really looking forward to have you being in there. And the leadership that you'll bring to the team is going to be fantastic for you. So the other thing that the Orange County guys have to really take a look at is Coach Danny Stone. You know, he had an incredible 3 months at the helm, pushed the team into the 6th seed of the playoffs, and nothing has been announced on his future. I don't know anything. The team hasn't given up anything, but there's 3 things that come to mind when it comes to Coach Stone. He needs to stay. He needs to stay. Please have Coach Stone stay because he really got the attention of the players. And with several players coming back because they are on multi-year deals, I think that the leadership that Coach Stone has brought to the team is fantastic.
I mean, the season that Orange County had was so topsy-turvy, but once he was at the helm, and shout out to Paul Hardiman, by the way, who was a guest on this podcast, Stone completely turned this team around, and they were ever so close to moving on within the postseason. I mean, they took Memphis 901, soon to be Santa Barbara, down to the wire. So a lot of good things.
They beat Memphis, and then they lost to Colorado. They lost. To
that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and extra time. I mean, again, another extra time game in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it was heartbreaking result. But I mean, we already harped upon that quite a bit.
Yeah, that was a tough one. But the fact that Coach Stone, I think he's got a very similar demeanor. If you listen to the post-game pressers that Coach Stone had, it reminds me a lot of Coach Obasi. Very even-keeled, very complimentary of the team, not yelling and screaming and getting guys. And I believe that that's what they need. The coaches that they had at the first part of the year, Paul Hardiman and Carson, they were very strong coaches. Don't get me wrong. I think the voice that Coach Stone brought in was just different, and it was the one that the players really, really brought onto. I mean, if you even look at right after he took over against the Las Vegas Aces, they were up 2-0 20 minutes into that game, the first game that he did, and then they lost a heartbreaker at the end of the game against the Aces. But after that, they go unbeaten all the way through. Or Aces, Lights. I think it's the Las Vegas Lights. That's what it is.
You're thinking WNBA.
I'm thinking, we were talking so much about women's sports. I kind of gave them the Aces. Sorry, guys. But it's the Las Vegas Lights.
Let's not forget, though, if you're a season ticket holder for Orange County, that there's a holiday party on Thursday, December the 5th at 5:30. It's going to be at Winterfest OC, 89 Fair Drive, Costa Mesa, California. If you want that zip, sure. What the hell? I'll give it to you. 92626. Holiday party if you have a season ticket for Orange County Soccer Club.
Yeah, and they do a nice job on those holiday parties. And if you get the full package on the Orange County season tickets, you actually get fed before the game, and the food's pretty good. They have a bunch of different stuff. They have, sometimes they have Raising Cane's, but a lot of the times they cater in. They've had a couple of really good Italian meals. So get your season tickets for Orange County. They're on sale now, and they're fantastic.
Absolutely. With that being said, we quickly transition to our miscellaneous segment. Tim, we got a World Cup in North America in just a couple of years, barely a couple of years. And with so many stadiums and facilities that FIFA was looking at that have turf, an interesting thing has sparked. FIFA has partnered with the University of Tennessee, go Vols, and Michigan State University, boo Spartan, because I know you're a Wolverine. They're going to be... Yeah, they're going to be researching, developing, and producing pitches for the 2026 tournament, stadium grounds, training sites, practice venues. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. I know that they started doing some games at SoFi. I remember I saw some of the first games that they were doing at SoFi, having to switch things to grass, the grass that they had in the past, not the best terrain, but now with some time, what's going to happen is they're going to be able to develop this pitch, and they're going to be spreading them across stadiums within the Midwest of the U.S., down in Mexico, in Canada. So that's interesting. If you're a student at Tennessee or Michigan State and you listen to the show, by the way, thank you. Snap a couple of photos for us, and we'll gladly pay you a couple of bucks, Tim will, to do some recon for us.
Exactly. I'll put a couple of my own dollars towards that adventure. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. The fact that when the World Cup was here the last time, they had grass turf inside of Pontiac Silverdome. That was super fun. I think that the fact that every one of the turf fields will be from the same place, they're putting in all of the technology to get into this so that it will survive at the higher elevations in Mexico. It'll survive if there's a cold snap in Canada. And that's going to be the fun part of it, is to see this turf and see these players know that they're going to be playing on the exact same turf every time, that the footing's going to be right. Now, if they can just fix the soccer ball like they had with the Adidas debacle a few years ago, that would be even better.
Grass, Tim, not turf. Grass.
Not turf.
And if there's anything that we know about in California, no better than other now than the state of Michigan, is how to grow grass. Puns intended.
Exactly. So I think that the grass will be a great equalizer to a lot of teams, because you'll have some people that were playing better because it was a harder surface. But if it's the same exact surface, right, that not super soft, not super tough, I think it'll be the equalizer for some of these teams, especially now that there's 100 of them, 32 teams are going to the World Cup this coming session. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out.
Agreed.
Yep. So check us out on the podcast. We're on all of your podcast adventures. So if you look at us on iHeart, on Apple, just search Soccer in 60 on your favorite podcast. We'll pop up. If you search Soccer in 60 on YouTube, we pop up right away. So get out, check us out on the podcast. Check us out on our Instagram. Our producer Gunnar has done amazing work on that. So check us out. And this has been Soccer in 60. Thanks, Billy. We'll catch you.